Hello, everyone. Welcome to Dham Music. Today, we're diving into Chapter 1 of Cranium. Remember to hit subscribe and follow us to stay updated with the latest videos. Cranium Chapter 1. A 16-seat charter plane heading to Paris, now a debris in the villagers' rice fields. Authorities assume the total casualties of 15 on board, including the pilot and crew. We are currently investigating this incident. The anchorman's emotionless voice reported through a microphone in front of the plane crash site. The site was barricaded for the investigation officers and the aviation safety officials, tasked to discover the cause of this crash. Yet countless press outlets attempted to interrupt their workflow. The lady wearing a collared shirt, rolled sleeves, and dark-colored pants, giving her an active impression. Yet her eyes looking through the rectangular eyeglasses were weary from traveling. She reached the site a few hours after receiving direct call from her research advisor this morning. Busaya, or Bua, found herself talking to the coordinator officer in charge of this plane crash incident. Just a second. Let me check the list of names assigned. Bua acknowledged that and pushed the eyeglasses up on her nose before brushing off her shoulder-length curls, obscuring her line of vision. I came in Professor Nasara's stead, the visitor added, handing her doctoral student card to identify herself. Her card hadn't yet been returned to her graduate colleague. The professor is working overseas. The officer responsible for the registered individuals looked at the paper again. Found it. Associate Professor, Dr. Nasara, from the Institution of Bioanthropology. The officer spotted Bua's name next to the advisors. Yes, she's my advisor. Dr. Nasara is currently having a seminar in Panama. She asked me to come in her stead. All right, please sign your name here. We'll get an identification card for you, she informed in a flat voice. Let me know if there's any problem or any additional equipment you need, Dr. Busaya. The coordinator officer handed her the document requiring her signature. Here, the young doctor handed back the paper. Thank you for coming to our aid, the lady officer said. Please, the administrative center and your work tent are right this way. In the evening, the officer will take you to an accommodation we are preparing for you. It may be a bit of short notice tonight. It's fine. Busaya made her way to the entrance of the incident scene. It had been about 20 hours now after a small passenger plane crashed in a rice field, central province of the country. Initially, the 15 passengers, including the pilot and crew, were assumed dead. However, a relentless search for survivors continued. She noticed the rescue dogs zealously circling about the site. Firefighters in fluorescent orange uniforms positioned themselves in case the fire broke out again. About 4 hours earlier, Bua received a call from her advisor, Associate Professor Dr. Nasara, to quickly arrive at the scene to assist the police in identifying individuals. Verifying or identifying the person's identity was one of the jobs in the anthropology field. Namely, it was a work in the field of forensic anthropology, usually carried out by a forensic expert or identity verification expert. This anthropology study examined the history of humans from prehistoric times, including our ancestors or close relatives like primates, mammals, and possibly other animals in order to study the evolutionary sequence. Bua expertised in physical anthropology, which studied humans and primates in terms of physiological structures, especially the axial skeleton, upper and lower limbs. These structures could interpret the species' living, social, and adaptations for survival. Or social anthropology could be studied to root back to the physiological structure. In addition, the anatomy could be traced back to the evolution before humans developed physical aspects like what we were today. This way, please, said the police officer in charge of the scene as he held up the yellow tape securing the rice field with burnt wreckage under control. About 500 meters ahead, officials were hard at work and some were actively searching for survivors. Bua noticed about 10 emergency responders stood by in that area. They were yet to complete their duties with no survivor found thus far. It was such a heart-wrenching moment. The other young policeman led her to a tent which Bua supposed was her work tent. This evening, there'll be a briefing with all the departments. Please feel free to start your work. We appreciate your presence. You're welcome. Busaya scanned the tent with 6 stainless steel autopsy tables arranged in it. She had no idea how many others were invited to work alongside her. The expert in physical anthropology and forensic anthropology were quite a rare find. Maybe it was just her. She wasn't an expert, far from it. Even much further compared to her advisor, Dr. Nasara. The professor was highly regarded in this industry. She'd been through all sorts of field works, assisted with various units in forensic anthropology, both inbound and over 10 other countries, not to mention her academic projects. Despite this rare field of work, more than 30 works by the professor were published in academic journals today. She was acknowledged as the top tier in the industry. And Bua, she was a PhD student. In fact, she graduated about 3 months ago with an approval of graduation from the graduate school with the dean's signature prominent on her dissertation. She was officially recognized as a PhD, but it took some time for her to adjust. Actually, this is the period during which she catches her breath after over 5 years of arduous effort and stressful studies, before she assumes the role at the research institute established by the professor. Busaya put down her luggage, including a small silver rectangular bag of tools, and her backpack against the autopsy table's leg. Someone would take her to an accommodation later, no doubt another tent. This was a field work. Sleeping in tents was more common than hotels. She stood over the table with the first pile of bones brought by the Rescue Foundation team. The bones were, of course, roughly piled as one. Some pieces were whole, some fragmented, and some were burned to crisp. What lay in front of her drew a sigh from Bua before she looked for her gear, gloves and face mask. Then she started her work. First bone she picked up to set apart from the pile was someone's clavicle, be it left or right side. The bones had yet been cleaned, the tissues remained intact. Piling up these bones complicated Bua's work to a great extent. In general, this was collecting forensic evidence, meaning barricading the area of incident and taking photos of tangible evidence. Evidence must be gathered into sections before the proof of identity to verify the deceased. I was just wondering who'd be here. A snide remark came from the tent's entrance about 45 minutes later. The newly graduated female doctor jumped out of her focus. Maybe I shouldn't have come. The voice she hadn't heard for a long time. It was soft and inviting, but laced with sarcasm. She looked up at the visitor. Busaya couldn't help but sigh the second time and looked away, silently asking herself why she still remembered this voice. She hated that she did. Pinya was in light-colored shirt with folded sleeves and neat dark trousers. Leaning against the tent's entrance, her hands in her pants pockets, her long brown hair slightly moved under the wind. Her eyes on Bua were ferocious. "Welcome," Bua said airily. "Really? Whatever. Why didn't I think they'd ask for your help too?" Busaya focused back on her task at hand. "Had I known, I wouldn't have come." Pinya was also a PhD student under Dr. Nasara, just like Bua. But one day, she raised a big commotion. Rumor had it throughout the building that Pinya accused the advisor for being biased on Bua. Then she resigned. Bua heard that Pinya had traveled abroad to continue her studies. She never heard of her again. "Where's your mommy?" Pinya referred to their former advisor, Panama. Her reply was short and curt. They never gotten along as far as they remembered. Pinya had been sarcastic of how Bua was the teacher's favorite. Bua didn't want to make it a big deal. It was ridiculous. Then there was a day their seminar topic to present to the teacher happened to be the same, worsening their relationship. Until the day Pinya went on a rampage and resigned, amid her confused peers. Bua's ignorance made Pinya stop in front of the autopsy table filled with burnt bones, most likely from the crash and burns. Unable to help it, Bua looked up again, pushing her glass with the back of her hand. "Your mom's not here. Don't cry." "What do you want from me, Pinya?" "Me? Wanting something from you? If not, then get lost. I'm here to work." "Aren't you at least a bit happy to see your old friend?" That made Bua stare through her rectangular glasses at the face covered with long hair. A sneer pulled at Bua's lips. "A friend? You've got your way with words." Busaya picked up one of the victim's skull, yet her gaze was fixed on the lady who had just called her a friend. However, they were not. Far from it. Then she continued. "There's a theory that modern humans had a large frontal brain, so they are capable of complex emotions, analytical thinking, distinguished logic and reasoning in details than that of ancient humans. So help me and make yourself the modern human, Pinya." Upon that, Pinya grabbed Bua's wrist as she shoved her face in. Watch your mouth, water lily. If you have nothing else better to do than just standing there and getting on my nerves, then help me work. We can fight later, Bua said, releasing her wrist to be free. Then she put down the skull and searched for glove from the toolbox to hand it over. Put that pile on a separate table. With that, Pinya shrugged and took the glove without saying anything. She recalled how it was like when they were in classes. Day to day, they were at each other's throat. Professor Nisara had to stop their fights. Bua chose to do the research when Pinya wasn't in the building. Funny how they were back together again in this unexpected event. A tragic incident that no one wanted it to happen. C9, their work had just begun. Parts of the passengers were scattered throughout the vicinity, with an area covering about 3 rai of rice fields borders. Note, rai is a unit of area measurement in Thailand. 1 rai is equal to 1,600 square meters. Let's keep going on. The Department of Aviation, yet unable to conclude the cause of accident, continued to search for answers, together with officials from many other departments. Do you have a magnifying glass? Pinya asked from beside her. Why did you come to work empty-handed? Despite that, Bua grabbed one from her toolbox and handed it to her. I headed straight here from the airport. The plane landed 3 ago, and I came here directly. They're getting me the tools. They must really run short on people they had to summon you. Bua couldn't help the sarcasm. Still as sass-mouthing as ever. You better watch your back. Bua heard an exhale and refocused on the important task at hand. And that's a wrap for Chapter 1 of Cranium. What did you think of the intense reunion between Dr. Pinya and Dr. Busaya? Things are just getting started, and trust me, there's so much more mystery, drama, and surprises waiting ahead. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you won't miss Chapter 2. Share this video with your friends and let them join the journey. See you soon in the next chapter of Cranium.